Hey, this is Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com, and today we're going to talk about limitations with research and performance. So a lot of times people are always like, well, Matt, why do you train this way when this research paper says this or this article says that? And I'll explain a little bit, and it might give you some intuition on why I think the way I think and also why I train the way I train. So let's get to it. But before we get to that, I want you guys to go on winningstrength.com and check out ATP and all the supplements that we and the clients and the fire departments that I train utilize. A lot of these supplements are deficient in many people in the population and could be the limiting factor in not only your recovery but also your performance. So let's get to it. So, the problem with training, and will always be an art more than it is a science. And the reason for that is that it's just very, very hard to control the human population. Why a lot of the books and a lot of the research that I use is overseas is based on the fact that they had more control of the athlete, which is really, really hard to do in a democratic society. A lot of the old Soviet coaches went to China and Iran after the fall of the Soviet Union in the early 90s. And the reason is they wanted to have success in training athletes. The only way of doing that is to have athletes in barracks with sleep patterns, nutrition patterns, and training patterns matching that of world-class competition. To do that in the United States is very, very difficult, and is why a lot of the developmental sports that we have, we are not very good at, i.e. Olympic weightlifting, because they take many, many years to be successful at. In the United States, we usually fall on genetics to be very good at anything. So if you're to look at top-level professional basketball or football or any of these other high-level sports, most of these guys are running on about 60% genetics and 40% work ethic, and that is being generous in my opinion. The point is that if you want to be Bo Jackson, you better look at your dad and make sure he kind of looks like Bo Jackson or has had some athletic ability in and of himself. Doesn't necessarily mean that your parents are always going to be the deciding factor of who you are. Bo Jackson's dad wasn't Babe Ruth. But at the end of the day, it does increase the odds in your favor. Now, getting to that, why research is such a pain in the ass in America, or in general, is a couple of reasons, and let's get to it. One, sample size. Most, if not all, of the scientific research and data that we have on strength conditioning in America is done with recreational athletes that at best maybe train 2 or 3 times a week on their own. The use of professional athletes for research is very limited, and long-term research is nearly next to none. So the big thing that we have is sample size. If you look at a lot of the Soviet papers, they're in the 20s, 30s, 50s, and hundreds, if not thousands of athletes that have been researched for at least 2 years to a decade, making their research insanely powerful and insanely usable based on the fact that it will probably work for most people if done correctly. The problem when we study in America is that we use college-age kids because they're free and easy to find for professors and researchers, and then we have them do a mixture of exercises and then base our research off of that particular information. The problem is that it's not enough people, and again, it's probably not utilizing exercises that you would consider to be ones that are commonly said by me and many other professionals that are really good. It's hard to do research on squatting, it's hard to do research on bench pressing, and it's hard to do research on deadlifting because it's multi-joint movements. That's why a lot of the older style research papers you're going to see using leg extensions and single joint movements based on the fact they can control the particular technique of the movement. That becomes a huge problem. So one, we have sample size. Usually to do a research paper in America for strength conditioning, you need 10. Well, 10's not that good. The next thing that we have a problem with, and we kind of hinted on it, was modalities. So the problem with doing a leg extension to decide any kind of muscle mass, on the research side, it makes it easy because it's a simple movement that you can't screw up. On the bad side is it's not really conducive to anything sport activity-wise. So to base your hypertrophy knowledge off of a leg extension paper, we can understand why that might be an issue. The next thing, and we hit it on a little bit again, is technique. Okay, so we have a lot of papers out on belt squats and regular squats and all that stuff, but who's to say what is proper technique? You take my technique, for example, base it on someone else like a starting strength technique, you're going to find that those two techniques are totally different. Now, I have a lot of reasons why I think my way is better, and I'm sure that Starting Strength has a lot of reasons why they think their way is better. But the point is, without getting into argument on that particular situation, how do you utilize that for a research paper? And the answer is, it's difficult. So a lot of times, like belt squat papers and other papers, you really dig in deep, or you see, I've actually been in some of those studies at Ball State University. You start watching and everybody's technique's a little bit different based on their experiences, coaching, and athletic ability, et cetera, et cetera. So the point is, this is why you don't see a lot of multi-joint studies done very often, and why everybody is so confused on technique. So where do we find technique? We find it with experienced athletes that have had 20 plus years of time in their sport and have minimal to no injuries. That really starts limiting the field on who we think has the best form, okay? The last thing that I think is most important, and we also hinted on it again, is the time period in which the study was done. Now, we all know that if you just do something for 6 weeks, unless you're untrained, probably not long enough in order for you to see a massive change or result. So that means that we're left to at least a 12-week, and that would be, in my opinion, a bare minimum amount of time to show positive progress without doing dumb shit. But in all reality, we're looking at multi-year training protocol in order for us to really understand how the body ticks, moves, trains, and adapts. If we don't do these things in yearly processes, we have a huge problem. Well, coming back to the researcher side and taking their defense, how in the shit do you get 50 people to do something for an entire year the way you want them done? Well, the answer is, in America, you don't. You have to go overseas to do that, or have to go back 50 years when the communistic Eastern Bloc systems were in their prime and they were doing the best research that they possibly could. So I want you guys to understand that there is science, and I do read science papers, and I really, really want you guys to dig more and start reading. But you got to remember that I didn't understand any of this until I was in my first year of graduate school, which means that probably 95% of you guys are not going to be at that schooling level or have aspirations to be at that schooling level, and that's fine. But my point is be careful at reading headlines on research papers and then reading the abstract and then taking that and going, oh, well, I know what this means, and now I found something new way to train. In reality, it's very, very difficult. Training should be thought of as a long-term process. We should be using multi-joint movements, and we should be using people that are already pretty proficient, right? So if I have a track coach and he shaves 1/10 of a second off of Usain Bolt, he's probably a very smart man. If I take a junior high kid and I have a track coach and he shaves 1.5 seconds off of a 12-year-old's time that's never ran before, he doesn't have to know anything to do that. And that's what you find is a problem with strength training research. We don't use people that are already strong, and we use that as gospel when we start to train. The answer actually comes many, many years later, and if you can make progress on advanced people, that's when you really know your stuff. So again, I don't want to bust balls on research. I want people to do research. We're going to do videos on the top researchers of all time. We're even going to mention some new guys in another video. So take this and leave some comments below and tell me what you think, and maybe list some things that you've seen as limitations on papers, and we'll talk to you guys later. Please go and visit wenningstrength.com and check out our manuals where we use as much good research as we can. I think each manual at the higher level has at least 15 to 20 research papers and or articles listed in there to back up what we're doing and why. Talk to you guys later.